Raider Nation, welcome back to Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast covering the Las Vegas Raiders. Scott Branson, along with Mo Moten here, your hosts on this journey through the remainder of this tough season for Raider Nation. We know, we're with you. We understand. We'll try to point out some of the positives. And of course, another loss. The Raiders moved to 2-11, 9 in a row now. And they lose a significant player. We'll talk about that. By the way, our video, if you're watching us on video, it's good to see you again. It's brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. And at BetUS, not only do they have great stuff where you can go bet, but we're going to give you 150% sign-up bonus along with our buddies from BetUS. That's right. If you go sign up now, 150% sign-up bonus, up to $2,000. All you got to do, very simple. We're not giving you a big task here. It's not a trigonometry problem. It's just use the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. Get that 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 thanks to our friends at BetUS. And, of course, they are a sponsor of Silver and Black today. We certainly appreciate that. Again, Scott Branson, Mo Moten, Moses Sr., NFL writer at Bleacher Report, covering the entire NFL. He also is a Raiders columnist up at sportsnaut.com. You can follow him on x.com at Mo Moten, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. You can catch my work up on sportsnaut.com. Mostly video these days, but occasionally I do a written piece as well, too. So you can check us out there at sportsnaut.com. The show is SNB Today. A reminder, subscribe wherever you get your audio. We certainly appreciate that. And don't forget to rate and review. If you're watching us on that video, sponsored by BetUS, then you can like the video. You can also subscribe to the channel you're watching on. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell on any channel you're on so that you know when we have a new video. Okay, Mo, Raiders, again, double-digit loss to Tampa Bay on the road. It's a loss you and I expected. Even going back to the preseason, we predicted that they might lose that game. Tough one to go to the East Coast. But we saw in this game, of course, the top story as of Monday morning and as we roll now into Tuesday was that it appears that Aiden O'Connell is lost for the year due to a knee injury he suffered on, which was a late hit. We'll get to that in a second because Raider Nation loves to talk about referees. We'll get there in a second, but he hurts his knee on a play where he was shoved in the back after he released the ball. So it appears, unless something changes, Desmond Ridder will start in the Monday Night Football matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, his former team. So there's a little bit of drama there for you, as the Raiders now will start their third quarterback of the season. And unless you're a really deep team with some kind of former All-Pro at quarterback that's a backup, it's difficult. It's a difficult year if you're on your third quarterback, and we'll get into that as well. We also want to talk in this segment about Sincere McCormick and the fact that he's been playing really well. Segment 2, we're going to talk a little bit about the coaching report and a take from Vic Tafur over at The Athletic. We want to discuss about the future of Antonio Pierce with the Raiders as well. Mo, let's jump right in here. Of course, the O'Connell injury, it's tough. He did not play well before the injury. Frankly, the offense of the Raiders could not get anything going outside of Sincere McCormick in that game in Tampa Bay. But you don't want to see an injury go down. It's a second injury for Aiden O'Connell where he's going to miss significant time. And this one, obviously, a knee, much more severe than when he broke his thumb earlier in the season and had to miss 5 weeks. So you look at this situation, Mo, Desmond Ridder now takes over. Not a bad thing for the people who are in the quote-unquote tank bucket. And so, Mo, I mean, it's hard to look at this offense and think, boy, it's going to get any better when you're going to go to a quarterback who has a history of, and I like Desmond Ridder, I do, but he's got a massive history of turnovers, especially fumbles, including interceptions. Although with the Falcons coming into Vegas, Mo, and that being his former team, maybe the revenge factor, he plays his best. But boy, the O'Connell injury hurts this team, I think, going down the stretch.
Definitely hurts him. I will say we wish Aiden O'Connell well. First off, anything said during this show is not a shot at Aiden O'Connell, the person. It's just an assessment of his play on the field. So I say that to rewind back to our last show, Scott, when we talked about there are some people out there who felt like Aiden O'Connell could be the franchise guy, right? That was kind of the discussion last week after his performance against the Kansas City Chiefs. And what did I say during the show, Scott? I said, the minute he falls off or has an off performance, people are going to move off that opinion pretty quickly. As you said in the opening, before the injury, before he went down with the injury, Aiden O'Connell, but not just Aiden, the offense as a whole did not play well. Aiden O'Connell did throw in red zone, and he threw an interception in the red zone, if I get that straight. So it was a sloppy game for both teams. Mm-hmm. But we're focusing on the Raiders because this is a Raider podcast show, right? So I think we understood that what Aiden O'Connell's ceiling was. A lot of people said that was unfair because he didn't get a chance to showcase himself, and he still really didn't. If you think about it, unfortunate breaks for Aiden O'Connell. If you go back to even last season, he gets thrown into a tough situation with the changing of hands of head coaches. I know he did play against the Chargers, but he didn't really have the job until Josh McDaniels was fired and Antonio Pierce came in and made him the starting quarterback. This year, he comes in. He starts one full game against the Steelers. He breaks his thumb against the Rams early in that game. Has a great game against the Chiefs. Everyone's excited for him. Everyone's happy for him. And then this injury happens last Sunday with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So just a tough go for Aiden O'Connell in his first 2 years between the turnover and the injuries. Again, we wish him well. But I think it's very clear, because now the discussion now is what do the Raiders do? Because they do have the number one draft pick right now. If the draft starts today, they're the number one pick. Doesn't mean it's going to end that way. They still have to play the Jaguars. But there's a lot of discussion about the Raiders, what the Raiders should do. And I see a growing number of Raider fans thinking you pass on the quarterback and you draft Travis Hunter. And I just think after watching this season from beginning to end, even before Aiden O'Connell got hurt, there's no way the Raiders end up with one of the top, if they do end up with one of the top 2 draft picks and pass on a quarterback. I love Travis Hunter. He's probably going to win the Heisman Trophy this year. He's going to be an elite athlete. I think he's going to be an immediate contributor, big time, in the NFL. But there are rare chances where you get one of the top 2 picks in the draft. And by the way, a lot of draft analysts agree with this statement that after Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, there was a big drop-off.
Huge.
If the Raiders have one of the top 2 picks, you must draft the quarterback. That isn't a shot at Aiden O'Connell. We wish him well. That isn't a direct shot at Gardner Minshew. We wish him well after he broke his collarbone. It's not a diss to Desmond Ridder, who's trying to revive his career. Good luck to him. But the Raiders need to draft the quarterback. It's time. It's time for the Raiders to go get their guy.
Yes. And the NFL is not about feelings. It's a meritocracy. And like you said, you don't like to see anybody get injured. But as we've been saying, and I've had online discussions with people about, Aiden O'Connell is a good quarterback. He's a good backup quarterback in the NFL. He's a guy who can come in and win you a couple games. Okay?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that. Recognize what he is. He's under contract for 3 more years, technically. Okay? So good. You got your backup quarterback. Now, you might have a better backup quarterback. Who knows? But you got to go out and get the quarterback. People arguing for this Travis. Again, I said it on the postgame show, Mo, with Murph. 9 of the last 11 Super Bowls had a quarterback appear in that Super Bowl who was on a rookie contract. I mean, I don't know how much else you need to say it. Okay, so it's vital, as you're going to see. And a good example of this is the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals have had this window. They crapped the bed this year. Their defense has been brutal. They signed Joe Burrow to the big extension, right? Because they had his rookie contract. They went to 2 AFC championship games and a Super Bowl. Couldn't win it. Now Jamar Chase is like, hey, hello, me. I gotta collect. T. Higgins, they said, no, thanks. We're not going to pay you. So he'll be gone after this year. But this is why quarterback contracts matter. Now, I think the window for the Bengals closing really fast because now you got to pay Jamar Chase. And so the money starts getting less and less and less. Now, the Raiders have this amazing cap space. So people are like, well, you could still do this. And then I saw a ridiculous report. Well, should they trade for Kirk Cousins? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So to your point, if the Raiders are in the top 2 of this draft, there's no question you take a quarterback. And it's unfortunate, like you said, Aiden O'Connell got hurt. I feel bad for him as a human being. But the game against the Buccaneers on Sunday, he didn't look good. He just didn't look good. You know, and again, this Raiders team cannot put together consistently 4 quarters of football. And, you know, I saw Max Crosby, who, again, plays 150% every game. You can never question his desire, his work ethic or any of that stuff. But he talked about how well the team responded to adversity again, Mo. But my question is, yes, you have little bouts of adversity in every game, right? That's what sports is about. You might be down by a run, might be down by a touchdown, whatever it is, you got to come back from that adversity. What's amazing to me, though, is that the Raiders always have to come back from adversity because they don't ever seem to be prepared well enough to come out and execute at a level where the adversity is minimized. And I think that is part of the problem you see with this team. This team's got lots of holes. It's got some injuries on defense. But overall, this team should have, I think, 3 more wins easily if they just execute and are able to play 4 quarters of football. So while I appreciate the comment, I think Butler said the same thing too about, well, we've overcome all this and overcome that. Well, overcoming it is not just surviving it. Overcoming it is actually conquering it and moving forward. And that's the only unfortunate about this team. I love that this team hasn't quit, Mo. It has not quit. That's a credit to the coaching staff. I'll give them credit for that. But this is where you need someone, I think, to come in from a player perspective. So roster folks, including quarterback, and he can be a young quarterback, and coaching staff that are going to come in and create an environment and a culture where it's not just acceptable to say, hey, we've overcome some really tough stuff. No, it's about winning and overcoming that so that you actually get better and you can see that progress significantly. And I think that's where the Raiders fall short.
The bar is low, Scott. I said this before. The standard has been the organization based on what we've seen for the past, 2 decades. Where have the Raiders been?
Yeah.
And I can say that because I've been watching them since that Super Bowl loss, before that Super Bowl loss. But I'm saying, what have they been since that Super Bowl loss? It's been very rare winning season, a playoff appearance here and there without a win. The bar is low. And to your point, someone needs to come in and raise the bar and raise the standard. Murph had a very funny video / GIF that he posted on my timeline, where there's a guy, not a guy, but former Raider great, saying, look, you don't lower the standard. You don't lower the standard. Regardless of what happens, right. You don't lower the standard to, okay, at least we can do this. I understand. I get the whole let's take baby steps in the right direction type of thing.
Sure.
But how long have the Raiders been trying to take baby steps in the right direction?
Right.
It's time to start winning football games. It's sports. You either win or you lose. There are rare ties in sports, but you win or you lose.
Yeah,
I get the consolation prize of, look, we've had a lot of injuries and we're still playing hard, and that's great. Not giving up is probably the bare minimum, because who plays sports to give up on anything? And I know there are players out there who do. I'm not here to talk about those players, but you have to raise the standard to, as you said, we're overcoming injuries, but we're also winning football games. Once you get to that standard, then you know you're a playoff contender.
Yeah. Are the Lions sitting there with 1 loss despite most injuries in the NFL? Most injuries in the NFL. Not the Raiders don't have the most injuries in the NFL. Okay, because practice squad players don't count, and special teams players, although they're important, they're not the same as losing Christian Wilkins. But the Lions are doing it. And again, I saw the Buccaneers doing it. Look at the Rams. The Rams survived all those injuries, and look what they did to Buffalo, right? So now they're getting healthy, but they survive. So you survive and you win anyway, or you stay at least competitive until you get back those pieces if they're coming back. But to me, that's the thing. You talk about lowering the bar, right? And I want to talk about lowering the bar, and I don't want to make this sound like I'm lessening the accomplishment, but I wanted to talk about Sincere McCormick, because I think the Raiders and Sincere McCormick have found a guy who can compete and be part of the running back room moving forward. I asked the question, I think, earlier in the weekend about why it took so long for them to recognize Sincere McCormick, because I think, and maybe it's out of context because I don't know, maybe he meant something else. But when Pierce talked about, well, we've seen this is nothing, we've seen this in practice all year. Well, if you've seen it in practice all year, why wasn't he playing? Number one. But beside that point, Sincere McCormick came out 5.2 yards per carry, which isn't like world beating, but for the Raiders, it's significant. He started to run the ball for whatever reason, even though I believe Scott Turner's called a much better offense than Luke Getsy. They went away from the run again, and they struggled when he was actually, I think, picking up steam. But Mo, give me your impressions of Sincere McCormick, why you like him, and why you think he's having more success.
I feel like Sincere McCormick could be the answer to the Raiders' short yardage situations at the very least. So I go back to the previous preseasons where we watched Sincere McCormick. And I know it's the preseason, but during those exhibition games, he didn't really rack up a lot of yards per pop. He was averaging maybe less than 4 yards per carry in most of those games. But I did notice that once the Raiders got into the red zone, he was able to finish drives. And that's something that the Raiders have struggled with. And he can at least help the Raiders in that regard, assuming he's back next year. Now, I'm not going to hand him the starting job just because of what he's doing in a small sample size. But I will say he could be in the mix for some touches. I think he's at least earned that for now. So I just say that to remind people not to be so short-sighted, because I remember Zamir White having an impressive 4 weeks last year. He comes into this year and doesn't look so great. I think part of it, not simply because, but I think part of it is because of the scheme. We don't know who the offensive coordinator is going to be. You mentioned Scott Turner. Will they retain him or not? We'll see. We'll see what happens with the coaching staff. But we have no idea what the Raiders scheme will be, who's going to be the head coach, who's going to be the offensive play caller. So before we pencil in Sim McCormick to be the guy, the Raiders have a lot of other solutions to come to with their coaching staff, and then based on that, you can make some decisions. But I definitely think Sincere McCormick belongs in the future of that backfield, assuming that he fits within the scheme of the offense.
Right, and I still expect the Raiders. I really do. He has a history of it too, as you know. I expect Tom Telesco to pick up a running back or two in the draft and bring in those young legs. Sincere McCormick coming back from that injury, it takes time. A lot of people think, well, some of these guys come back from a knee injury in 1 year and they think, wow, everybody can do that. Not everybody can do it, but Sincere McCormick, man, he's got some explosiveness and he's got that drive. I love, to your point about short yardage situations, and it's awesome, right? And to your point about not lowering expectations. So you cheer for Sincere McCormick and say, hey, good, this is a good turn of events for the Raiders at running back. But just like we didn't want to crown Aiden O'Connell a franchise quarterback after the Chiefs game, you don't do that with Sincere McCormick yet. But he's got a great opportunity to put himself in the mix, Mo, especially for that role, because you look at the NFL, across the NFL, there's some outliers, of course, Saquon Barkley and others. But really, it's about having two running backs. It's about having two running. We saw the Chargers lose again to the Chiefs because they could not. They were running the ball well at times, but with Dobbins out, they just didn't have that 1-2 punch they needed to, I think, kind of take it to the Chiefs, and they end up losing that game. So Sincere McCormick can play a factor there, and it's a good thing, because this offense, and it starts with the quarterback, goes back to the quarterback. This offense has only been able to score more than 20 points 3 times this season. And part of that reason is because of that lack of running game, Mo.
Right. I would just look at the team that they just played, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Bucky Irving goes down early in that game. Yep. Sean Tucker comes right in, and he fills in pretty well. But he had 47 scrimmage yards, had a long gain on a play. The Buccaneers have been rotating 3 running backs all season, really, because Rachaad White had been banged up early in the season. So Sean Tucker was mixing in, and this is why I love Liam Cohen as a OC and potential future head coach. The creativity there. He's been able to juggle 3 running backs, and they've all been effective in their own way. Sean Tucker more in the pass catching responsibility, but Bucky Irvin has been involved, and he's a rookie. And Rachaad White, he was there before Liam Cohen got there. He's been able to mix him into the rotation. And again, they've all contributed. So you don't have to have a featured running back. You don't have to have a Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry or Kyren Williams in Los Angeles, the Rams. You can have a 2-man or a 3-man backfield and somehow make it work. Liam Cohen has made it work in Tampa Bay. I feel like the Raiders are set up for that situation if they don't want to go with a star running back. Early in the 2025 draft, they can have Sincere McCormick around, as Madison is going to be, I believe, a free agent. So is Amir Abdullah. You can draft the running back in the 3rd, 4th round, pair him up with Sincere McCormick, maybe bring in another guy. If you get rid of Zamir White, maybe you keep Zamir White around. Who knows? But Tom Telesco and his history as a GM with the Chargers, if you look at his draft history, he usually likes to have multiple running backs, at least two guys getting the majority of the touches.
And he's done a pretty good job when he was with LA of finding running backs that aren't the big stars of college football, but that they perform well in the NFL. So he's got a good track record there. So and that they haven't had longevity, but they do in spurts, and that's why he drafted multiple running backs every year. At least he understands the shelf life.
Really quick, Scott, I'm not saying he's Austin Eckler, but Austin Eckler went undrafted. And you see what his career was with the Chargers. Sincere McCormick, undrafted. Who knows? Maybe the Raiders have a gem in Sincere McCormick. And the more he gets experience and he can be, the next undrafted running back who turns it into a long career, turns a small opportunity into a long career. We'll see. Again, I'm not crowning him, but I'm saying he has at least earned more snaps going forward. And I think he's caught Tom Telesco's attention because Tom Telesco understands that you don't necessarily have to draft a running back in the first round to get yourself a starter or a contributor. You could find that guy after the draft, as he did with Austin Eckler.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we come back on this Tuesday edition of Silver and Black Today, we're going to talk about the future of Antonio Pierce again. Did he catch a break with the injury to Aiden O'Connell? I know that sounds terrible, but there is a piece out there that talks about that, and we'll bring that to you. Also talk a little bit about the defense, because there's a couple guys I want to call out there. The Raiders defense did very well up front, which was significant after the first two quarters. That is, when they got to the second half, they did really well. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. On third segment, of course, we're going to get to your phone calls with the Raider Nation mailbag. Don't go anywhere. Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast video brought to you by our friends at BetUS. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Mo Moton, Scott Branson, your guides, taking you through segment number 2 here. We're going to talk about the coaching future of Antonio Pierce in Las Vegas, as well as a little bit about the Raiders defense. If you're watching us on video, thank you to our good friends at BetUS for bringing you the video. And a reminder that you can get a 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000. Just use the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. Start playing today. Come play with us. I did not have a good weekend, Mo. I was all over the over. I saw you were too. And I took the Bowers over too on yards, and we lost both of those.
I split even on BetUS. As you know, I also bet on non-Raider games,
Correct.
Games other than Raider games. And I had and this is still bugging me, but Jaden Reed of the Packers disappearing, doing his best ghost Halloween costume. I mean, my gosh, 0 yards on 1 target. Like, you couldn't get any more way off than that. I did bounce back with the Rams Bills over. That went way over. That was an exciting game, by the way, Sunday Night Football.
Great game.
Bills looked like they were going to get rolled out of Los Angeles. They try to come back. Josh Allen has an amazing performance in a losing effort. I hit on that bet. It was the over. And I had one more over. I believe it was the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. Felt like usually when you see division games like that, and the first game was played in Seattle, was a bit rainy, the conditions. Usually when you see division matchups like that, chances are the first game and the second game aren't the same. Like, they're not carbon copy of each other. Usually they're different. So if the first game is high scoring, sometimes teams will make most times teams will make adjustments, and then the second game is low scoring. Or if it's low scoring in the first game, the second game is usually high scoring because the offensive side makes most of the adjustments. So just a betting tip for people out there. But I did miss on the Raiders over, and I'm not blaming Aiden O'Connell, but I will say, had the Raiders got into the end zone on that drive, we would have hit the over, Scott. They scored a touchdown on that. They hit the over. Not blaming Aiden, because again, both teams played sloppy ball. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers had turnovers. I believe they had 3 turnovers in that game.
Yeah.
So both teams were contributed to us not making money on that bet.
Well, and that's where this game that the Raiders are going to have on Monday night against the Falcons is a big one, because the Falcons and the Buccaneers are vying for that NFC South championship, right? For the division, and they're knotted up, and the Buccaneers are not playing well. So the Falcons, of course, lost, but they have an opportunity. So it's a big game for the Falcons. Huge game for the Falcons. So we'll see how that all goes, and all that. But by the way, I took my sons up to Canton to the Pro Football Hall of Fame because my son's high school, my two sons go to the same high school. Their high school played in the Ohio State Championship for Division I high school football. Unfortunately, they lost. You talk about a bad sports day, Mo. Friday night, I'm out there. It's 20 degrees, wind chills like 12, freezing to watch this high school championship game. But we got to go to the Hall of Fame and all that was great. It was awesome, by the way, if you get a chance to go up there. But they play terribly. And then at the same time, I have on my phone, I'm watching UNLV get beat by Boise State. It's just, oh my, it's much easier to cover sports than to be a fan. So for all of you out there in Raider Nation, I understand your pain. So, but anyway, but proud of my UNLV Rebels. Coach Barry Odom left to go to Purdue. I thought he would wait, maybe take it, but I know it's a Power 4 conference, but I thought he might wait for a better job. But anyway, good for him. You go from $1.5 million to $4.5 million a year. Yeah, I'll take it. So congrats to my alma mater, UNLV. And congrats to the Bishop Moeller High School in Cincinnati here, who, of course, lost championship game, but did really well. Great bunch of young kids there. All right. We're going to get into AP again, everybody's favorite subject. Mo, I'm going to read this from Vic Tafer over at The Athletic. And we're a big fan of Vic's work. Vic talked about in his game story about the Raiders. And he says this, he says, the O'Connell injury may be good for Pierce's future. There was some thought around the organization and the league that Pierce may need a couple of wins down the stretch to ensure his return next season. The bad quarterback play, Davante Adams' defection, and season-ending injuries to 4 key defensive players were valid excuses before O'Connell's injury, and now maybe the results of the final 4 games don't matter. Now, Vic's a great reporter. I'm sure that's exactly what people told him. I just can't get there, though. The injuries, all that matters, but I'm not even looking at that. If this team was 2-11 and Antonio Pierce wasn't mismanaging the clock, wasn't mismanaging the game, this team was more well-prepared, played 4 quarters, but lost, I would be in that bucket to say, hey, you know what? He had a bad go and he deserves another chance because everything I've seen. But Mo, to me, I just can't. And it's not me again. It's not about not liking the guy. I just don't see any evidence to why, even with the challenge he's had, you would give Antonio Pierce another shot, knowing, especially if you're picking first or second in the draft, that you're getting a young quarterback and that you're going to then have to build your team around them. I just don't understand it, Mo. Am I wrong? Do you see this point, or give me your sage advice?
I actually discussed this on my Bleacher Report Live that Antonio Pierce could pull the injury card and say, hey, if my job depended on the last 4 to 5 weeks of the season and I lost my second quarterback of the season and now I'm on a third string quarterback, how can you really assess me on those last 4 to 5 weeks with a third string quarterback? From that perspective, I understand what Vic's saying. I understand that thought. The problem, though, is I don't think 4 to 5 weeks should sway your opinion either way on AP, simply because the Raiders had been stacking up losses way before that.
Right.
So what about September through November?
Right. They haven't won a game in 2.5 months, Mo. 2.5 months.
The Cleveland Browns were the last game they won when they were 2-2, when they went 2-2.
Yes.
And that seems like the Stone Age from where we are now. Yes. So I don't see the logic of you just throw away the first 3 months of the season and you base it on this last 6 weeks or 5 weeks and say, well, because now he's on his third string quarterback, now you can't judge him. Now you have to keep him because not have to, but now it's in favor of keeping him because he's on a third string quarterback. Again, I would say, well, what about, from the end of September through Thanksgiving? Like, what about those games? Like, the Raiders are on a 9-game losing streak. That losing streak didn't just start 2 weeks ago. It's been going on now. Right. It's been going on for months now. So unless AP had won out and the offense looked completely different than it did in the first half of the season because he moved over to Scott Turner for the offensive coordinator position, then I say he has a case. But the Raiders, if you look at their scoring overall, they haven't been scoring more points since Scott Turner took over. You can look up the numbers. They're still averaging, I believe, less than 18 points per game.
Right.
The problem with the Raiders is they still can't finish drives in the end zone. I talked about the red zone interception with Aiden O'Connell on last Sunday. And they're going to get more, like you pointed out, Scott, they're going to have more turnovers with Desmond Ridder. If you watched Atlanta Falcons games last 2 years, and I did, his problem was turnovers in the red zone, which is basically a younger version of Gardner Minshew. So I hope Desmond Ridder does well. I sincerely do. As a person who has great interest in the Raiders and does a show focused on the Raiders, I hope Desmond Ridder does well. He's trying to revive his career. I understand it. Wish you the best, dude. But his problems are problems that Raider fans have been seeing all season with other quarterbacks. And I don't see that turning around anytime soon. If that doesn't turn around, the Raiders are going 2-15, 3-14. And again, I don't think you base the last 6 weeks of the season to say, based on what happens in the last month and a half, we'll make a decision on AP. If I had to guess, I would think that the powers that be are already leaning in a direction. But as I said, you don't just fire AP in the middle of the season. You let him finish it out, because what exactly is it going to accomplish firing him late November, early December? It doesn't accomplish much. You let him finish the season, and then you take a look at the whole season in totality, and then you make your decision. But right now, I don't think there's anything that's changing AP's forecast or his job security situation.
No, and listen, injuries aside and all that stuff, because those are valid to a certain point. It's just been terrible. It's just been terrible. It's not a well-managed team. Now, he's well-liked in the locker room. Like I said, this team has not quit, and I give Antonio Pierce and Will Forever the credit, because when you're 2-11, it's hard, right? You see a lot of teams give in, right? And that's how coaches get fired early, or, you see what you see in Jacksonville. Now they lost their quarterback again, and they did okay on Sunday, but even then you see guys quitting here and there. I don't see quit in the Raiders, okay? Which is a credit to the players, number one, and number two, it's a credit to the coaching staff to keep those guys moving, because they like him. There's nothing wrong with liking a guy and saying he can't do the job. And the evidence is overwhelming. If you don't want to see the evidence, that's on you, right? So we're not going to sit here and beat the dead horse, and we're not here. We don't do hashtag fire this person. That's not what we do. We're just talking real. So I appreciate Vic's report, but it just doesn't seem, and I agree with you, I don't think a few wins down the stretch matter. By the way, I want to talk about the defense a little bit, because those first 2 quarters, the defense was getting gashed against Tampa Bay. I mean, they were moving the ball. I think I said on X, it was like watching a scrimmage. It was just brutal. They go in at halftime, they come back, and that defensive front did a great job. They mixed up the blitzes as well and did well, and they pressured. And that's why I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers struggled and they had the turnovers, was because the pressure. They really got to Baker Mayfield a lot of the time. And so I want to give them pressure. I also think that Clavon Chasen, Mo, might be one of those diamonds in the rough where that you take a guy off the scrap heap and he finds a place where he feels he fits in. Now, he might have a new defensive coordinator next year, but I really like what he did. Of course, he had that interception, great focus on that interception. And I'm not saying this is going to be an all-pro type player that many thought he could be when he came out in the first round, but I like what he's done there. And I think he's another guy, whatever the Raiders need to do, he's a guy you probably want to bring back.
Yeah, I praised one thing I said about the Raiders under Antonio Pierce is the one thing they've done well in these 2 years. They know how to pick up a guy off waivers, plug him into that defense, and all of a sudden he looks like a different player. So they did it last year with Jack Jones. Jack Jones, by the way, got his second interception yesterday, so I cashed in on that bet over at BetUS. For the people who didn't see it, I said that was my lock of the year. Not that the Raiders wins. I like the Raiders over on the wins, but I said Jack Jones interceptions, 2 interceptions for plus 110. I said that is the lock of the year. That was free money, and he got it. I guess Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday, but I digress. The one thing that the Raiders do well is they know how to pick up or find defensive talent that's available out on the street. Again, they did it with Jack Jones. Of course, he had the connection with Antonio Pierce, so that certainly helped his situation there. But Clavon Chasen, picking him up, didn't just play well last Sunday. He's been playing well for a few weeks now. He has strung together multiple quality performances. And if you're thinking into the future, and I know, like we've said this before, the Raiders defense could be pretty good if Klayvon Chaisson continues to play well. If Malcolm Kuntz is back on a cheaper deal, Max Crosby is going to be Max Crosby. Christian Wilkins comes back healthy. You got Jacorian Bennett if he comes back healthy. If Jack Jones snaps back into the player we saw last year, a lot of ifs there. I know I used if a lot there, but
they're all realistic.
They're all very realistic, and to add Klayvon Chaisson to the mix is only a strong positive. And Tom Telesco, again, seeing another former first-round pick find his way with this defense. Now, we don't know what the Raiders coaching staff situation is going to be next year, but you would hope that he fits into that picture and helps that defense perform at a high level in 2025.
Yes, and I got to give a golf clap. 3 takeaways on Sunday. It was like
something they struggled with all year.
And it happened 2 plays after I tweeted that fact out about them having the least amount. I was like 12, giving up 12 fumbles without getting one back. It's since the 1959 Rams, and boom,
reverse jinx.
It happens. Reverse jinx.
Reverse jinx.
Not only that, but it was unfortunate because they got the 3 takeaways, only were able to do something with one of them. But that was another positive that you saw from that defense as well. So good for them. All right. Excuse me. Got choked up about this.
Getting choked up about the turnovers.
Yes, we're going. We're going to take our final break. When we come back, it's time for you. It's time for the Raider Nation mailbag. We'll get to your calls. By the way, if you want to call in, all you got to do is call 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869 to be a part of the show. Call in. Keep it short. I think that the voicemail goes up to 3 minutes. Aim for 1.5 minutes. That's like the perfect. That way we have time to answer you and all that stuff and fit everybody's calls in. So we have some serial callers who go a lot longer, and that's okay too, because some of the points are amazing. We get amazing calls. But try to be pithy. Don't forget your name. We got another call today that I didn't want to skip, but it's an unknown again because I don't know. The voice sounds familiar. I just don't know who you are. So make sure you leave your name, where you're calling from, right at the beginning. Don't forget, okay? All right, we're going to take that break. When we come back, it's time for the Raider Nation mailbag. Don't go anywhere. Okay, in 3, 2, 1.
Enough of hearing us talk about the Raiders. It's time to hear from you.
Any Oakland Raider fan, Las Vegas Raider fan, stand up.
On this edition of the Raider Nation mailbag.
That black hole rocking and rolling.
Don't be a wallflower. Be a part of the show. Leave your question or message by calling 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869. Or drop us an email at mail@silverandblacktoday.com.
Oh, yes. Time for the Raider Nation mailbag. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Okay. Is anybody in the mood for some Christmas music? No? No? Okay. Good, because I can't sing anyway. But we can talk about Raiders football. Silver and Black today. Scott Gulbranson, Mo Moton with you. We are an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Also, our video brought to you by the good folks over at BetUS, where you can get 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 using the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. Get over there, bet your football like Mo and I do, and get that free money. Yes. All right. Mo, we got calls. We're going to get right into them all over the board today with different subjects, all within similar vein, obviously. We have our good buddy Tarek, who we'll get to in a few calls here, who, of course, calls like I think it was the halftime or third quarter or second, whatever it was, which I love those calls. And Tarek has been very accurate in texting me before the games his predictions, and they're usually pretty right. So anyway, okay, our first call, we're going to go to our good friend, and this is Bill out in Virginia. Here's Bill. Oops, there he is. There's Bill.
Hey, Scott and Mo. Hey, this is Bill from the 757 in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Hey, I just want to say that I'm watching the game right now. It's not over yet, about 2 minutes ago, and of course the Raiders are going to lose. Probably it's 13-21 right now. And I'm still proud. I'm very proud to be a Raiders fan for the last 44 years of my life. This team played very hard. They did not quit. Looks like he just scored another touchdown. They're definitely going to lose. Okay. They did not quit. They did not quit at all. They're not going to tank, as people say. Okay. That's a bunch of crap, and that's a bunch of crap. I guess fans can say whatever they want, but it's a good thing they're not in charge because nobody in the NFL ever tanks on purpose, especially not the Raiders. Okay, they played very hard. They showed up today. So did the Buccaneers. Okay, and it looks like it's going to be another loss for the Raiders. But I'm very proud. I'm very proud of each one of these players. I'm proud of Aidan O'Connell. I'm proud of everybody on this team. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Yeah, bye now.
Nice, Bill. Good call. And I agree. I think, the toughest thing is when you have a situation which is a no-win situation. I mean, you're 2-10 coming into the game. Your season is going to end after week 18, right? So, or 17, excuse me. So it is what it is. But you're right, and we talked about that earlier in the show. This team not quitting is significant because if you're Tom Telesco, you're watching everything. You're watching each player, how they're performing in practice, how they're performing in the games, and it gives you insight into who you're going to keep around when you start to, if you change coaches, if you start to rebuild certain parts of this team and reassess certain positions. That's a big deal.
Scott, you led me right into the point I was going to make here. And it's a point that I haven't talked about in depth, but when you're rebuilding a team, right, even if you keep in a coaching staff, the one thing you want to look at, even for a team that's 2-11 like the Raiders are right now, is how much cleaning of the locker room do you have to do in the offseason? So when you start to see players quitting in the last 4 to 5 games, and you look at a player and like that guy's out there just going with the motions, acting like he has nothing to play for, you got to turn over the roster almost more than half of it or more than half of it. The positive, the silver lining, if you want to put it that way, pun intended, for the silver and black. But the silver lining here is, even with the holes that the Raiders have, Bill just pointed out how they're not quitting. And we've said that for weeks that they're not quitting. Of course, we want to see them win football games. I'm not a guy who stands on his soapbox and screams about moral victories. But if Tom Telesco is looking at this football team and thinking, okay, how many people do we have to turn over for the 2025 roster as we get rid of for the next offseason? Do we have to get rid of 3/4 of the roster because more than half the guys quit? And I don't think that's the case. Nope. I think it's more of, can we get guys healthy back for the offseason? Can we get a quarterback? Can we get the offensive line to build some chemistry together? And then can we add some pieces via free agency with all the cap space we're going to have and the extra draft capital, thanks to Devontae Adams wanting to go to New York? Can we now have an offseason where we get guys back and we add some pieces, and all of a sudden, as I said, Scott, I know you disagree with me a little bit on this, can we turn it around pretty quickly? And I still think that's realistic for the Raiders if they get the coaching staff and the quarterback positions right.
And I rest my case on the final 2 points you just made. Quarterback, coach. It's everything. It's everything. You saw it with the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. Chiefs had no business winning that game. Not that the Chargers are that good, but they're pretty good. And it just makes all the difference in the world. So, all right, Bill, thanks, man. We appreciate the call and you sharing your comments. Now I'm going to get to the unknown caller. Don't know your name, but we're going to get to you anyway. Here you go.
Scott Mo, how you guys doing? I'm calling in 12 minutes in the second. Sorry, 12 minutes left in the second quarter. AP challenges a play. That's not even close. And we've been talking about this throughout the whole year about decision making. This is why you can't be a coach, in my opinion. I'm tired of seeing the same game management. Like, I know he's a rookie, but this is too much. Like, this is just, if it was getting better throughout the year, I would understand, but I'm just sick and tired of this. This is why he needs to go. Hope you guys are doing well. Appreciate the show. Bye.
All right. Thanks for the call, unknown caller.
That caller has definitely called in before.
Yes.
I can't pick out his name, but I definitely recognize the voice. I feel like this person is from the East Coast, either PA or New York, one of those states.
Yeah.
But I definitely remember the voice. But Scott, I want to jump into this because I talked about this on my Bleacher Report Live. And I said, look, I understand we're watching the game from the comfort of our homes, tablet, computer, whatever the case is. But Antonio Pierce should have people watching to tell him what's a bad challenge and what's, a good challenge, a challenge that he can realistically win. As the caller said, that Trey Tucker non-catch was not even close.
Not even close.
It was not even. You can see clear as day, he was out of bounds. His foot was not even close to being in. It was a no. I don't know who advised him on that, but whoever advised him on that, because I'm assuming maybe he didn't see it in real time and he's getting advice from whoever. That was a terrible, one of the worst challenges I've seen in quite some time.
No, it's again. I'm going to use an analogy because I like analogies. But it's like you go to a restaurant and they have some pretty good food, but the management and the serving staff just are not very good. So it ends up tanking your experience. And I think that's a similar situation. I don't have much to add to it because it was evident and we saw it and we've been seeing it. We've been seeing it all season. And again, I'm not trying to be overly negative about somebody. It just is what it is. So we can move on. All right, we're going to get next to where are we going? Oh, we're going back out to California. It is our buddy Misha from Orange County. Here's Misha.
Scott, Mo, what's up? It's Misha in Orange County. Hope you guys had a good Turkey Day. I'm still recovering from the turkey hangover. I'm not going to say too much about the game against the Chiefs aside from what the hell. Where the hell was that all season long? And before I go any further, I heard there was some mention about maybe possibly bringing Daniel Jones in, and there's also been discussion about, not drafting a QB and getting Travis Hunter instead. And just stop that. Stop that.
Thank you, Misha.
It's just bananas to me that we're even going down that route. Daniel Jones, like really? I don't know who, suggested that. I really hope it wasn't Tom Telesco, because if that was his bright idea, questionable. But I want to talk about something that hasn't really been mentioned too much. I know there's been a lot of focus about AP and his future, obviously the quarterback situation and the draft. But I think one thing that hasn't been talked about a lot is the run game. I know it's been mentioned, but in terms of what we want to achieve long term. So the number one running back in this league currently, in terms of stats, I believe, is Saquon Barkley. What's the Eagles' record? Number two, I believe it's Derrick Henry. What's the Ravens' record? And number three, Josh Jacobs. What's the Packers' record? The bottom of the league, aside from the Raiders, we have the Dallas Cowboys. What's the Cowboys' record? We got the Cleveland Browns, averaging about 87 rushing yards a game. What's their record? New York Jets, averaging about 87 yards a game. What's their record? So my question to you, gentlemen, is in terms of, I know obviously we know head coaching, quarterback, but what are you thinking in terms of running back? Do we get one in the draft, or do we look at the free agent market? Take care, guys.
All right, Misha, thank you. Listen, Mo, I think it's all the above. Draft, and like you said, you and I both mentioned multiple times on the show this time about Tom Telesco's history with drafting multiple running backs in multiple drafts. So I think you'll see that, and then we'll explore the market as well. To your point, Misha, about the teams that are at the top of the league right now in their running games, I think that's not just it's not that the running back is carrying those teams, right, Mo? I mean, it goes hand in hand with having a balanced offensive attack that starts up front with a pretty good, very good offensive line, a quarterback that can run the offense and pass the ball, and that balance on offense of being able to run the ball and have a great running back like Saquon Barkley, but you also have Jalen Hurts, you have St. Brown, you have St. Brown in Detroit, but you have Jahmyr Gibbs, you have a kind of a committee there. What do they call themselves? The video game thing.
Sonic and Knuckles.
Sonic and Knuckles. Thank you. So you look at that and in Green Bay with Josh Jacobs, who's had a great year for him. Good for him. It's about balance. It's not, to me, yes, they have good running games, but it's not that offense is primarily good because of the running game. It's all of it together.
It's all of it together, but you could see it from two ways. Misha pointed out from his perspective that, okay, connection here. Good top running back. All of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but these
Top
teams
offense.
are performing pretty well. But let's
Yeah.
also remember the 3 teams that he mentioned: Eagles, Packers, Ravens. What did they all have in common? They were already playoff teams before those running backs got there.
Yeah.
So let's not forget that all 3 of those teams were playoff teams before their star running backs signed with them. And you can even add Joe Mixon to the Houston Texans to that list. The Texans already were a playoff team before Joe Mixon got there. Now, did those running backs make those teams better and more formidable and steady those offenses? Absolutely. I get that point. But it's not as simple as add a star running back and all of a sudden you're a viable contender. Or add a top running back and you're a viable contender. Because I can go in the other direction and say, well, what happened with DeAndre Swift going to the Bears? DeAndre Swift had a career year with the Eagles. By the way, as I said, they were a playoff contender before Saquon Barkley got there. What has DeAndre Swift done for the Chicago Bears with the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft? Their offensive coordinator has been fired. There's been reports of mutiny in the locker room. That's beyond the running back position. But what I'm saying is, it's not as simple as add a top running back, all of a sudden your offense is good.
Right.
Your team has to be pretty good to support that running back as well, because I'm going to say this very clearly. If Josh Jacobs were on the Raiders right now, the run game would be better, but he wouldn't be putting up the numbers that he's putting up with Green Bay. You got to remember, Green Bay has Matt LaFleur there. That Green Bay offense has been pretty good. They got Jordan Love there. I know Jordan Love has been pretty mediocre in the past few weeks, but when you have a quality play caller and a quality football team, typically the player is going to look a lot better. I'm here in New York, Scott, and when the Giants let Saquon Barkley go, a lot of the talk was, oh, Saquon Barkley's not that good. Look at his numbers with the Giants. And all of a sudden, Saquon Barkley's leading the league in rushing, and he could be the first MVP winner for running back since Adrian Peterson. Why is that? The Eagles have a quality. They have one of the
Great
best
offensive
offensive lines in the league.
Absolutely.
So you have to factor in the environment that the running back is playing in and say that's also part of the reason that running back looks like a star wherever he is.
Absolutely. All those guys you mentioned, Barkley, Henry, Jacobs, and then you go to Gibbs in Detroit, and Kyron Williams at number 5. Chuba Hubbard is at number 6 in the league, and obviously they're not a great team. And then you have Robinson in Atlanta and Kamara, Pollard in Tennessee, and Aaron Jones in Minnesota, obviously. But if you look at most of those, with the exception of a few, most of those too also have, like you said, playoff offenses with franchise quarterbacks, right? And then you look at Pittsburgh at 10-3 with a rejuvenated Russell Wilson, and Najee Harris is in the top 12, but he's not at the top. He's good though. Najee Harris is at what, almost 900 yards. He's going to hit 1,000 yards, I'm sure, in the season. So yeah, so it's all about balance and, like you said, adding to a playoff team. So good stuff, Misha. I appreciate the call, man, as always. Now we're going out to our buddy Tarek. Here's Tarek.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Mo. This is Tarek. What is up from Tucson, Arizona? Just watched the Bucks go up 21-10 with about 8 minutes, 45 seconds to go in the fourth quarter. Looks like AOC is done for the year. What a dreadful quarterback situation for us this year. I mean, I think it's way more horrendous than anybody could have anticipated. So, at this point, let's continue with the youth movement. I'm loving what I'm seeing from McCormick. I wonder how the coaching staff didn't see that in the preseason. Chason, Richardson, Bowers, Glaze, JPJ, just continue to have all the youngsters out there and put a lot of tape on film to distinguish who warrants coming back and maybe who does not. The defense was positively solid for the most part after allowing 14 quick first quarter points. They're showing zero quit at all. And you just got to wonder, man, if they were healthy, what would a starting lineup with Crosby, Wilkins, Chason, Tyree, Kuntz? I mean, those guys would be beasts. But I think at this point, it is safe to say that AP is done. He needs to go ahead and walk the plank, as does most of his coaching staff. As you mentioned earlier, a few weeks back, Scott, there's been zero improvement in his coaching abilities, situational football, in-game adjustments, the game management, some of the questionable times he's made challenges. I mean, it's just been absolutely terrible in every sense of the word. So I think this, again, we're keeping it a little competitive. We're seeing some good youthful talent out there, but a complete reset, a reboot, as I've said before, is what's going to be in order. And I think Raider fans and Raider Nation are going to see all those things coming to fruition as soon as, 4 more games to go. 9-game losing streak at this point. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. I know, Scott, I know that you think AP's already done as well. Mo, I'd like to hear what you think about that as well. Take care, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
There we go. Tarek calling us during the game. We got his message on the Tuesday show. Okay, Mo, he wants to know what you think about the future of AP and whether or not it's sort of a foregone conclusion.
I think it is a I think it is a foregone conclusion because at this point, there's nothing that the Raiders or AP can do to change my mind. There are only 4 games left in the season. I mean, even if the Raiders were to win out, does it really give you hope and promise that all of a sudden it's all been figured out? Those last 4 games will have to be spectacular. Like the Raiders have to be scoring like 40 points a week, and the offense will have to, and the defense have to look spectacular for me to think, oh, maybe the light bulb finally went off. But it doesn't work like that. It hardly ever works that way. If you didn't feel like AP was a strong candidate to keep his job going into December after Thanksgiving, then there's nothing that's going to really change your mind at this point. We just talked about the challenge that I felt like was one of the worst challenges I've seen this season, challenging that Trey Tucker catch that clearly was not a catch. And as we've been pointing out, some of the calls and yourself have been pointing this out from October, November, has there really been any improvement in the game management, in the challenge decisions, into the 4th down decisions that AP has been making? I would say it's been minimal to none. Mm-hmm. So if you're not seeing any improvement and there's nothing that can change in these last 4 weeks of the season, then it has to be a foregone conclusion that he's not going to be back. I forgot who the reporter was. Oh, actually, I think it was Mike Florio. Raider fans hate Mike Florio, but he was on the Rich Eisen show, and he said he thinks it's a foregone conclusion that the Raiders are going to move on from Antonio Pierce. And I understand Raider fans can't stand Mike Florio, but in this case, I do agree with him because it's very realistic that the Raiders are going to finish winless in their division. I said this last week. You go 2-15, which is comparable to Art Shell 2.0, his tenure, and you go winless in the division, and you have all of these issues behind the scenes with players complaining about scheduling, with AP calling out his players and then apologizing for it, with game management issues. It's just too much to overcome. I think they wipe the slate clean. Tom Brady goes to Tom Telesco and Mark Davis and says, hey, we got to start with a fresh, clean slate. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I do too. On his point on the defense, he said, boy, if they had all these guys, it would be a different story. I don't think it would be. The defense would be playing better, and they might hold opponents to less points, but the Raiders are averaging 18 points a game. That would be tough because the best defense in the NFL as far as giving up points per game is the Chargers at like 15.7. So could they be as good as the Charger defense? I don't know, but boy, that would still be close enough, Mo, where I don't know if they would, maybe they'd be a little closer to 500-ish.
They'd be closer to our prediction, which is 7 wins.
Correct. Yes. But they would not be a playoff team is my point because they don't have the offense. That's why you got to have complimentary football. But Tarek, good point, man. As always, great call. And we look forward to hearing from you later in the week or next week. All right. Now we're going to close out the show with our friend Johnny, who's originally from California, but he's down in Florida now. Here's Johnny.
Johnny, straight shooter.
Scott and Mo, watching this abysmal Raider game. Once again, this is Johnny in Florida via California. I just don't understand what Antonio Pierce is doing. He has like no fire in him, playing conservative football. I just don't understand it, You're 2-10. It's 4th and 2 down there at the 8-yard line. Why not go for it? Then at the end of the half, we make an interception where there's 25 seconds left on the clock. 1 timeout, and you take a knee. I mean, this guy is unbelievable, man. Like he's just he talked about being aggressive and all this. There's nothing aggressive about this guy. Not even in a 2-10 year. I'm just so over AP. He has to go. I can guarantee you this: if he's brought back next year, we will be a losing team. And I do not trust that man with no future quarterback. He absolutely brings nothing to the team. He's terrible. I don't know what more to say other than go Raiders. We need a whole new coaching staff. We need somebody that's got fire. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, he just straight sold us a dream. He knew how to sell himself. He's like a car salesman. He knew how to sell himself to the Raider fans. You know, smack mouth, tough football, and there's none of that. So, great show. Hope to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think.
All right, there's our guy Johnny telling it like it is. Like you said, he's a straight shooter. Right when the call started, Mo, and he's a lot of. I'm hearing a lot more fans with that opinion, and it's a disappointment. It's not because they don't like Pierce. It's because they feel like they were sold that the style of play, the attitude, and then they see a very different thing. Now the injuries and all that play into some of that, but again, people always want to, and it's a bad comparison. They want to compare people to Dan Campbell, but when Dan Campbell was 3-13, you saw the locker room speech from this past weekend when they won. He was the same at 3-13. He had that same fire. He was screaming. He was yelling. He was and I think fans are disappointed because they don't feel, even if the Raiders were losing, I think they'd be okay with it if they saw what they feel like they were getting.
Like I said when the call started, I like Johnny because I remember Johnny's calls not just because of his California accent and straightforwardness. It's just he's very consistent.
Yeah.
Once he starts like, even if you didn't say this is Johnny Flores, once he starts, this is definitely Johnny. But you know what? He brings up a point, and we talked about this on previous shows about, and I'm so done with the Dan Campbell comparisons.
I know, yeah,
because Johnny's point about the lack of aggressiveness from this Raider team, while they haven't quit, the one thing that Dan Campbell brought to that team once he got there, even as you said, when they were 3-13 and won. When they won 3 games in a season, he was always aggressive. That was always his approach. Whether they were winning, a winning team, a mediocre team, a losing team, he was going to be aggressive in his decision making. AP is not aggressive. And that's where the comparison stopped for me. You could say, well, they gave Dan Campbell a chance, so Antonio Pierce deserves a chance. You have to earn opportunities. You're not just given opportunities. And at least with Dan Campbell, you could say he had a vision for a team, and what he said was what the team was going to be. You could see the vision for it. He had an awkward, clumsy press conference. We talked about biting kneecaps, and everyone made fun of him for that. People made fun of AP for his Raider chant. I get the parallels there, but it stops there. Because as I said, Dan Campbell has been aggressive his whole tenure in Detroit. Antonio Pierce said the Raiders team was going to be aggressive, and we didn't see much of that at all in the first half of the season. I got a little more aggressive in certain points in the second half of the season when the season was already lost and they were on a losing streak. But as Johnny pointed out, it's still not aggressive enough compared to the message that he sent during the offseason. So if you want to draw comparisons there, it's not connecting for me simply from a mentality standpoint of Dan Campbell is an aggressive head coach. Antonio Pierce is far more conservative in comparisons of coaching style.
Right. And you had people with t-shirts that were tweeting out every day, violence, physicality, pain, that kind of stuff. And it never appeared. It never stopped. I've never started. You never saw that team. Now you have certain play. I mean, look, is Max Crosby about physicality and trying to bring pain to his opponent? Absolutely. He lives that. He breathes that every single day. But this team's identity was never that. And so I think you hear from Johnny there. Obviously, the results are disappointing. We've talked about this challenge that was brutal with Tucker. But it's that lack of identity, I think, too, because everybody thought they would take the identity of this coach. Now, obviously, the players love the coach. They're playing hard for him. But it just hasn't translated. And that, to me, just points at somebody just not ready for the moment. Who's ready for last year at the moment to step in as a substitute teacher. But it takes a lot different mindset, skill set and I think experience to step in and be the guy full time and run the whole operation. And that just hasn't materialized. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Scott, and this is not to rail on AP, but now I'm at the point where, as I've said in response to Tarek's call, that I don't think he's back next year. The biggest indictment on AP right now, even with a losing football team, as I said with Dan Campbell, you could see the vision for that team. You could see what he wanted the culture of the team to be. Mm-hmm. Now, Antonio Pierce had a message about what he wanted his team to be, but it's now going into week 15, Scott. What is the identity of this football team? Do they have an identity?
None.
And that's the problem. Even if you have a losing football team and you can see there's an identity, there's a foundation being built, you can say, okay, we'll let this play out for another 2 years to see where it goes. We're going into week 15, and for the callers out there who listen to our show, tell me what's the identity of this football team, and don't say they don't quit, because that's the bare minimum. That is the bare minimum in sports.
Absolutely.
If you walk into anywhere and say, well, what's your best quality? I don't quit. Okay, well,
okay.
What we need a special attribute. We need something we can say, this quality is why we're going to bring you into the fold, why we're going to keep you around. Not quitting is, while it's commendable, I tip my cap, it's the bare minimum. You're in sports. You're expected to win games. That's the top of the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Not quitting is something you shouldn't do. I mean, if you spend your life playing a sport, 8 years old, 7 years old, you shouldn't want to quit. Like that should be one things you don't want to do.
Right.
And again, raise the standards out there. We have to have higher standards for the Raiders, considering what the late Al Davis set this franchise out for. Not quitting is way down here. Like, you're expected not to quit. That is the expectation. Now you have to raise the bar going forward.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Mo, it's Tuesday. Let everybody know what else you got going this week before we see them again on Thursday.
So I'm going to keep it positive this week on my Bleacher Report Live. I'm going to talk about players who either have who have done a lot in the past few weeks and can, do something to keep their jobs in 2025 and stick around on a new contract. We talked about Sincere McCormick. We talked about Clavon Chason. I think a lot more spotlight should be paid to those players who are playing well amid a terrible season record-wise. So I just want to shine a spotlight on those guys who aren't getting enough pub, in my opinion. And, of course, I'll be back here with you, Scott, on Thursday. And because the Raiders are going to be playing on Monday Night Football, no Sunday post-game show. It'll be a late Monday Night Football Bleacher Report live stream, late night with Mo, after dark with Mo, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, no.
Monday Night Football, Raiders-Falcons.
Is it going to be kid-friendly?
It's going to be, yes, we're going to keep it kid-friendly. I did joke that if the Raiders were to draft Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, that I would do a Bleacher Report live show without a shirt. I would go shirtless. But this show after the Raider Falcon game will be strictly PG. No shirtless Mo. After dark Mo, PG rated.
All right, there you go. PG rated. I love it. All right. Make sure you follow Mo on X.com as well. MOEMOTN. That's Mo Moton. I am at LV Gully. Thank you guys for being with us today. And thank you to all the callers. Again, if you want to be a part of the show, 702-900-7869. And one more reminder, get your special BetUS. They are the ones who bring you this show on video. Get your special sign-up bonus, 150%, up to $2,000 using the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. Go check out the great people over at BetUS. We love them. We appreciate them sponsoring the show all season long. And we appreciate you subscribing, rate, and review wherever you get your audio. Also, same thing on the video. Shout out to our producer, Mike Robier, for all his work as usual. And for my partner, Mo Moton, I'm Scott Gulbranson. This has been Silver and Black Today. We will see you all on Thursday. Have a great week.